Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where winter isn't just a season, it's a trial of endurance. You're about to find out how the Vikings, those wool-wrapped wild legends of the North, made it through nights that could break your modern space heater in seconds. We're talking bone-splitting cold, snow that lingers for months, and winds sharp enough to slice your thoughts in half. Honestly, you probably wouldn't last a night, but that's fine. That's why blankets exist. Before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from, and what time it is there right now. Curious which part of the world you're curled up in. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's drift together into tonight's story. You wake up in the middle of a frozen Scandinavian winter, sometime around the year 875. Snow is piled outside like nature's own fortress wall. It's not just cold, it's the kind of cold that fuses your eyelashes together and creeps into your teeth. You're deep in Viking territory, where the sun barely rises, and every day is a fight not to freeze. Beyond your longhouse, the world lies silent and white. Ice grips every edge, snowdrifts climb to your waist, fjords are sealed under glassy frost, and trees groan beneath the weight of ice. Far off, wolves howl, like the wind itself is hungry. But inside, life breathes. Smoke curls toward the rafters, seeping through tiny gaps in the roof. The air smells of wood fire, meat, and people. Bodies huddled together beneath layers of wool and fur. You're on a shared bed platform, feet tucked under someone's armpit, not optional. There are at least a dozen of you under one massive blanket. You try not to inhale too deeply. Deodorant isn't a thing yet. Still, it's warmer than you'd think. No accident there. The Vikings had a genius for survival. You're lying in a longhouse, the main structure of a farmstead. Long, narrow, practical. The walls are thick with turf and mud. The timber roof slants low like a stretched-out hobbit hole. The mix of mud, manure, straw, and insulation magic keeps the cold at bay. Even the animals, cows, pigs, goats, sleep beside or near the humans. Their body heat seeps through the walls and shares its warmth. It's not exactly cozy, but it works. At the center burns the heart of it all, the hearth, a single steady flame that glows all winter. This is no dainty candlelight, it's survival. The fire burns small but constant. If it dies, someone could freeze. If it smokes too much, you'll be coughing soot. Most of these homes had no real windows, maybe a smoke hole and a drafty door. Views didn't matter. Staying alive did. And here's something eerie. Those carved posts around you. They might hold the spirits of ancestors. Vikings believed souls could dwell in sacred wood or bone. When you lean back, there's a small chance that warm beam behind you is part of Uncle Bjorn. Not everyone lived like this, though. Scholars debate how widespread these sturdy longhouses were. The wealthy had warmth and livestock. The poor made do with drafty sheds and fewer furs. For some, winter meant surviving frostbite, not fighting it. Yet their resourcefulness carried them through. They didn't just endure the season. They built lives in it. They laughed, told stories, even made children under the same blankets that kept them alive. Romantic, in a strange communal way. You're still cold. Your breath fogs in front of your face like a ghost refusing to leave. Somewhere, a child whimpers in sleep, dreaming of a summer that feels mythic. You try to stretch, but your legs are knotted with someone's grandmother. Too bad. You bury your nose in rough wool and wait for dawn, or something close to it. Morning comes without sunlight, only a gray glow creeping through the cracks. You wake because someone stepped on your face getting up. It's fine. You're a Viking now. You untangle yourself, pull on whatever garment smells least like goat and face another day alive, which is an accomplishment. The longhouse breathes warmth like a living organism. Low ceilings trap heat. Every corner bends toward the central fire. An old woman stirs a pot of thin barley porridge. No sugar, no comfort, just calories that keep hearts beating. The walls are stuffed with moss and turf. Not decoration, but insulation. Prehistoric cork, expanding with moisture and keeping out drafts. Snow piled on the roof helps too, acting like nature's blanket. Even architecture had its rhythm. Houses aligned east-west to catch the rare sun. Doors small to lock in warmth. Animals kept close for heat. Low ceilings meant every wisp of heat stayed near the people. Of course, the downside was smoke. Without chimneys, it lingered, filling lungs with soot. Some scholars think that smoke even helped preserve food and drive out pests, though at the cost of blackened lungs and chronic coughs. The old coughed, the young adapted, and everyone kept breathing. Better smoke than ice. Wealthier families had wooden floors, hides on the walls, and even stone fire pits to contain heat. The poor made do with dirt floors and mystery smells. But warmth was warmth, even if it came from the combined body heat of half a village. Sleeping close wasn't just comfort, it was physics. You move nearer to the hearth, rubbing smoke from your eyes. Around you, life hums quietly. The scrape of a knife, a child poking the fire, boots stuffed with straw and herbs by the door. They've mastered the rhythm of winter, turning endurance into habit. Benches double as beds and storage. Beneath you lies dried fish and spare rope. The door stays bolted. No one wants to face the blizzard waiting outside. Inside, heat trembles but holds. You wrap your cloak tighter and listen to the quiet music of survival. Humming, bubbling stew, melting snow dripping from the roof. It's not comfort, but it's life. If you plan to survive, you'll need to move, hunt, mend, repair. Viking life doesn't pause for frostbite. That's why layers matter. Clothing is armor. Scratchy linen under tunics, coarse wool over tunics, trousers sometimes lined with fur, boots stuffed with hay and moss, survival couture at its finest. A belt carries your knife and comb. The cloak, heavy and fragrant with sheep, seals your warmth. Mittens, hats, and fur-lined hoods complete the look. They rarely wash these garments, not from neglect, but because water froze. Clothes were aired, smoked, or rubbed with snow. Archaeologists have found ancient tunics stained dark around the armpits, proof that hygiene was practical, not aesthetic. Still, some researchers believe Viking fashion had bursts of color from berry and root dyes. Reds, yellows, greens, even purples. Though others think most folks dressed in muddy browns like walking earth. You wear whatever fits. One mitten too small, a boot plugged with moss, a cloak that smells of someone else. Doesn't matter. You're dressed to survive. Step outside and the air slaps you awake. Wind cuts sideways, snow stings your cheeks, and your breath crystallizes midair. You pass the animals, steaming in the cold, and nod to a woman spinning wool by a small fire. Her hands red, her patience endless. Without her thread, no one would make it to spring. Back inside, you thaw by the hearth, boots off, cloak steaming. Someone tosses you a hunk of dry bread. You chew slowly, grateful. Wool is life here. The Vikings prized it above gold. Women spun and wove through every season, trading extra garments as currency. Each cloak, mitten, and tunic was a coin of survival. Catch your reflection in a bit of metal. Wine-burned face, matted hair, running nose. Perfect. You look alive, and that's what counts. Hunger gnaws. Porridge and air can't last. Someone scrapes a pot by the fire, stew made of salted mutton, beans, and root vegetables. Fat floats like gold across the surface. You dunk hard bread, taste smoke, and call it good. Hunting's scarce. Food is rationed with reverence. Vikings preserved meat by drying, salting, smoking, even fermenting it, sometimes to extremes. Fish hung like jerky from rafters, or buried underground until edible. Some say it was delicacy. Others call it desperation. Either way, it kept people alive. They drank ale or mead instead of water. Safer, slightly warming, and enough to make the cold tolerable. Archaeology shows Viking diets were balanced. Grains, nuts, legumes, vegetables, stored in root cellars or granaries against the frost. Every bite was strategy. You haul more firewood in, drop it by the hearth, and chew another hard crust. Some bread was mixed with bark or bone dust when grain ran low. Not delicious, but survivable. And that's the goal. Every meal is a countdown, every mouthful a gamble. Evenings bring a strange intimacy. Shared bowls, shared songs, whispered math, counting rations, measuring days left before hunger wins. You sip ale, lean back, and know the fire's your only guardian. Outside, the snow falls silent. Inside, life clings close. The fire glows low, painting spirits in shadow. This is the Viking hearth, the heart and myth of survival. Fire is life, ritual, and prayer. It's tended carefully each dawn, revived from sleeping embers like a god waking. You watch sparks drift into the dark rafters like tiny dying stars. Someone hums an ancient tune. The cold presses at the walls again, but inside, the fire burns, steady, sacred. Night deepens. The dark outside breathes like a living thing. You're wrapped with kin and strangers, sharing warmth, sharing existence. Bathing? Not a chance. The rivers are ice, the wells nearly solid. In summer, Vikings were known for cleanliness. They even had a word for bath day. But in winter, even the cleanest soul learned to wait for spring, and they used combs, tweezers, and even tiny ear spoons. Personal grooming mattered, but once winter truly arrived, it all went out the very frost-bitten window. Welcome to the season of strategic filth. You wake already sweating in your wool layers, which somehow makes you colder the moment you stand. Your hair is pasted to one side of your face, and your socks feel suspiciously damp despite you not moving for 6 hours. There's a basin of water by the hearth, half frozen, and you splash a little on your face, just enough to sting and snap you awake. That's your bath. Enjoy. As for the rest of your body, you mask smells with other smells. Burned herbs, animal fat, smoke. Honestly, most people around you reek so similarly that your own stench just blends into the chorus. The human nose can only protest for so long before it gives up and resets. And underwear. Technically, yes, though not in the Victoria's Secret sense. Viking underclothes were linen if you were lucky, wool if you were practical, and often reused, patched, and, let's be honest, crusty. It wasn't unusual to go weeks without changing them in winter. Not from laziness, but because taking off clothes was a hazard. Every second spent naked in the cold is a gamble your vital organs might lose. One slightly horrifying historical detail: parasites were common. Lice, fleas, the works were part of daily life. There were even lice combs buried with Viking dead. These folks fought enemies with axes and also spent chunks of free time chasing tiny bugs through their hair. It's humbling. And while winter didn't exactly kill the lice, oh no, it did slow them down. Even bugs dislike the cold. Which brings us to a strange little Viking hygiene workaround. Saunas. Yes, seriously. These weren't hotel spa steam rooms, but stone or wooden huts near water, heated by fire, sometimes shared by the whole household. In those hot rooms, people would sweat out grime, scrape themselves clean with metal or bone tools, and maybe, just maybe, splash cold water over their bodies if they felt brave. The steam opened pores, and for a moment, the heat let them forget the world outside was locked in ice. There's academic debate over how widespread these saunas were. Some think they were mainly for the wealthy or high-status folk. Others argue they were fairly common in certain regions, especially where geothermal heat made things easier, like Iceland. You're not in Iceland, so you've probably never seen one. You're stuck with face splashing and strategic smoke. Still, hygiene mattered in its own way, not for freshness, but for health. Wounds had to be cleaned with snow or boiled water. Filthy hands meant infected cuts. So even if you weren't washing daily, you tried to keep things from rotting off. More work than it sounds in a world where your toenails might freeze if you take your boots off too long. You spot someone plucking a louse from their child's hair and crushing it between fingernails with the kind of grim efficiency that only comes with years of practice. It's gross, sure, but that's life. People weren't squeamish. They were practical, cold, and practical. You settle back by the hearth, still swaddled in your cloak, and glance at the basin again. There's a fresh crust of ice on top. You crack it with a stick and hold your hand above the water. That's how cold it is. You can feel it before you touch it. And yet someone will use it tomorrow, likely to wipe an armpit or soak a cracked heel. Quirky fact, Vikings sometimes chewed birch or juniper twigs to freshen breath. Those natural toothbrushes had antibacterial bite, didn't freeze into clubs like real brushes might. So while your body is 7 layers of wool and despair, at least your teeth aren't plotting escape. And now a word on hair. It's long, tangled, and smells like campfire, which is fine. Everyone's hair smells like campfire. You might plait it if you can find a comb not currently delousing someone else. Beards? Oh yes, full, bushy, sometimes beaded or braided for style and utility. A beard iced over in the wind was a badge of honor. A solid chin icicle meant you'd been outside and were hardcore. You lean back against the bench, letting smoke and dried fish fill your nose. The air feels thicker here, humid with sweat, ash, and survival. You scratch your ankle through 3 layers of sock and fur, wondering if that's a mosquito bite from last summer, or something much, much worse. Bathing, it turns out, isn't missed until it's gone. You never realized how nice clean feels until clean became seasonal. But you adapt. You stink. Everyone stinks. Weirdly freeing. The cold forgives a multitude of sins, and it's not like you're attending a fancy dinner party anytime soon, unless you count the unsettling aroma from the stew pot as a dinner guest. In that case, a handful of snow and some birch bark might be your cologne. You're braced for another long night. No, you don't feel clean, but you feel alive. In this world, that's enough. By now, you've learned to breathe through your nose only when necessary, and never question what's squishing inside your boot. You've also learned that while the Longhouse offers cramped, smoky safety, life doesn't stop just because the air outside hurts your skin. The Vikings didn't hibernate. They moved, traveled, worked, fought, even raided. Apparently, frostbite builds character. You step outside again, the door groaning behind you, and the cold hits like a slap made of knives. It's not only the temperature, it's the way wind snakes into your clothes, creeps beneath your tunic, and makes your bones want to shiver right out of you. You hunch your shoulders, pull your hood close, and trudge toward the stable, along a path shoveled through waist-high snow. You've been volunteered for travel duty today. Lucky you. Vikings had to move even in the bleakest weather. Food needed fetching or hunting. Neighbors needed visits. Messages had to be carried. In some cases, whole trading trips or military ventures happened in deep winter. That meant crossing icy rivers, frozen lakes, and snow-drowned forests, where your companions were creaking trees and your own regrets. You bundle up as best you can. Wool layers, a fur-lined hood, thick gloves, boots wrapped in hide. You're dressed like a waddling bear, and you're still cold. The trick is not stopping. Keep walking. Let motion stoke heat from within. Eventually, your body forgets it's dying. Probably, the Vikings were clever about winter travel. Instead of floundering on foot like a clueless future person, they used sleds, not the downhill fun kind, but big flat-bottom sledges pulled by horses or oxen. If you were lucky, someone had skis. Yes, skis. Long, curved wooden boards strapped to leather boots, sometimes bound with sinew. Not for sport, but for survival. They let people glide over snow with more speed and less misery. One of the earliest references to skiing comes from Norse sources. There's even a god for it, a bow-carrying deity of skiing and winter hunting. When your world looks like a freezer for 6 months, you start giving divine status to anyone who moves swiftly through it. You, however, are not divine. You slog along on foot, step by step, following a narrow track packed by earlier travelers. Your boots crunch loudly. Every sound is magnified out here. No birds, no running water, just the low roar of wind in the pines and the occasional crack of a tree giving way under ice. You try not to flinch. The cold bites hardest when you pause, so you don't. You keep going, teeth clenched, eyes narrowed against the glare. Snow throws weak sunlight back like a mirror, stinging your eyes. Some Vikings carved primitive goggles from bone or wood, slitting them to cut the glare. You squint instead. Function over fashion. Quirky fact time. Viking warriors on skis were real. There's even evidence of ski troops in conflict. Imagine someone gliding toward you in silence through the snow, spear in hand, and a perfectly unimpressed face. Ski warfare wasn't just fast, it was quiet and terrifying, especially if you were on foot. Back to you. You've reached the wood's edge, where a stand of pines blunts the wind. You pause, snow to your thighs, rubbing your hands inside your gloves to coax back feeling. Your breath huffs in big clouds. You shift, hearing the groan of frozen branches above. Nearby, something moves. A fox, a squirrel, something hungrier. You don't want to know. And here's a historical question worth considering while your eyebrows freeze. How often did Vikings actually travel far in winter? Some scholars say they hunkered down and kept to their land as much as possible. Others point to trade records, sagas, and graves suggesting year-round movement. There are accounts of ships dragged across ice, sleds hauling goods across borders, and raiders who didn't wait for spring. Vikings were hardy, impatient, and often desperate. Waiting wasn't always an option. Back in your borrowed Viking present, you finally deliver the parcel. A clay pot sealed with wax, probably full of dried herbs or rendered fat. You don't ask, you don't care. You just want to turn around and begin the long trudge home. First, a cup of warm ale from your host and a seat by their fire. It's amazing how generous people become when you arrive shivering, red-faced, and dusted with frost. The return is quicker, not because it's easier, but because your limbs are going numb and you've reached that magical state called rage momentum. You stomp through snow like it owes you money, ignoring gloves gone stiff and toes that feel suspiciously detached. The wind hasn't eased. It's worse now, howling a true Viking lullaby. You finally stumble back into the longhouse, cheeks blazing, steam lifting from your shoulders like you're about to ascend to Valhalla. Someone tugs off your boots. Another drops a fur around you. You're too cold to talk, so you grunt thanks and shuffle toward the hearth like a drunken bear. The warmth hurts at first, stinging ears and prickling skin, then settles into something like comfort. You made it. One journey, two near-death moments, several ice-related regrets. But you're back, you're thawing, you're alive, and the snow still falls. Outside, the wind roars like a jealous god. Inside, the longhouse has become a dim, flickering cavern of voices and firelight. You curl close to the hearth again, wrapped in a fur that smells of wet animal and old smoke. Best of all, no one's asking you to go anywhere tonight. You stay put. And while the cold keeps seeping through turf walls and the timbers creak like they remember better seasons, something else begins. People settle. The room grows quieter, slower, thick with expectation. It's story time. You've seen it coming. The low light, the way everyone edges closer. The old man clearing his throat with the same ceremonial croak every time, like he's about to proclaim a law. You're about to witness a key tool of Viking survival, not just physical, but mental. When you can't go outside, when food runs low, and the sun barely shows, you pass the hours the only way that keeps your soul from freezing, with stories. Skalds were the poets, the memory keepers, the professional mouths. Some trained for it, others were born with loud voices and terrifying recall. They could recite lineages, epics, blood-bright sagas with perfect rhythm and barely a breath. You'd think that kind of brain should fix the eternal winter problem. But no, they were artists. Their work was to slice reality into something mythic. Tonight's skald is the old man who smells faintly of sour milk and seal fat. He perches on a low bench, hands folded like he's about to knit, then begins, not loudly, but with a deliberate beat, the gentle sway of a cradle. The room goes utterly silent. Even the goat stopped chewing. He tells of Egil, the warrior poet with a skull so thick no axe could break it. Of how he drank a king under the table and composed verses so sharp they made grown men weep blood. The tale winds through battles and heartbreak, curses and clever insults. Every few lines, someone nods. They know this one. Still, no one looks away. That's the beauty. The stories are old, older than most here, yet alive in this space, this fire, this minute. When the wind howls like wolves and the snow threatens to swallow the barn, these sagas give people something solid to grip. One historical fact: many Viking tales weren't written down for centuries. They lived as spoken memory, passed skald to child, to farmer, to smith. That's why the sagas we read feel like echoes. They were carved into minds long before parchment. You lean back, half asleep, still riding the rhythm. The skald's voice rises and falls like a tide. He shifts into the legend of Freydis Eric's daughter of Eric the Red, who fought off attackers in the New World with a sword in one hand and a bared chest. Yes, that's the story. She's said to have scared warriors by slapping a blade across her own breast and howling like a beast. True. Who cares? It's perfect. Scholars argue, of course, about how historical these episodes are. Did Freydis do that? Was Egil's skull axe-proof? Or did the stories morph over generations to inspire, teach, entertain? Probably all three. That's oral tradition. It flexes, evolves, adapts to the moment, just like the people huddled at this fire. You glance around. Kids drift off on their mother's shoulders. A man carves a spoon absent-mindedly, hands moving to the cadence. A woman darns a pair of mittens. The sagas don't interrupt life. They stitch through it like invisible thread, tying everyone into one shared mythology. It's group therapy in blood-soaked verse. And here's the quirky twist. Some stories were darkly funny. Vikings had a dry, sharp wit. They told of trickster Loki, whose blunders led to goats flying over mountains or gods turned into beasts. Not always glory and doom, sometimes laughter when everything else felt endless and cold. The Skald pauses, letting the room breathe. His eyes touch each face, measuring stamina. He could stop. He should. No one moves. So he dives into creatures that only show on the blackest nights. The Mara, shadows that sit on your chest as you sleep, stealing breath. A shiver ripples the room. You remember the tightness in your chest last night. Coincidence? You tell yourself yes, but maybe don't sleep alone. Just before the tale ends, the silence deepens, like the story has reached into everyone's ribcage and gripped something ancient. You feel it in your gut, in your bones. The cold outside is vast, but this shared fear, shared laughter, is the fire that won't die. That's how Vikings survive those endless frozen nights, not only with fat and wool, but by feeding the mind, passing down stories bright enough to burn inside heads when the sun stayed hidden. You're warmer now, and a little less alone. The Skald finishes with a gravelly line and a grunt. The fire pops. Someone exhales. Long. Life resumes. A log is added. A baby fusses. Someone asks for the sea monster tail with the cursed silver ring. The old man just chuckles and leans into shadow. Tomorrow, maybe. You pull your fur tighter, lean your head back, and let stories drift through your mind like snow on a silent world. Morning, or something like it, creeps in like a whisper from the edge of a dream. No sunrise, just a dim smear of gray along the seam of the wall where cold light leaks in. You blink awake under shared fur, pressed between two snoring bundles of wool and human breath. The fire has dulled to glowing ash. Outside, the world remains frozen, smothered in snow, clutched by a winter that refuses to let go. Worst of all, the sun still won't show up and do its job. You don't realize how much you miss it until it's gone for days, then weeks. In parts of the Viking world, northern Norway, Iceland, Greenland, the sun literally disappears in winter. We're talking full polar night, days, even weeks, with no direct sun. Just long, weird twilight draped over the horizon, like a moody teenager refusing to get out of bed. And it does something to you. You feel it in your bones. Skin goes pale and tight. Sleep tangles. Moods sour. No one is singing folk songs with joy. This much dark begins whispering to your brain. And the Vikings, tough as they were, weren't immune. You drag yourself up, wrapped like a poorly rolled rug, and notice the silence, not peaceful, but dead. No birds, no footsteps, no soft thud of tools, just breathing. People move slower, stare longer at the fire. The kid near the door rocks without rhythm. You know that look. Cabin fever, the original kind. This wasn't cozy Netflix winter. This was months without light, without fresh air, without much to do beyond stories and the occasional hallucination. The Vikings adapted. Body clocks went fuzzy. Sleep got weird. Time stopped behaving. Days melted together. People woke at night and stayed awake for hours and slept in bursts. 4 here, 3 there. Monophasic sleep. Never heard of her. Here's the historical bit. Society ran on a seasonal rhythm. In winter, many tasks slowed or paused. Raiding dropped. Farming stopped. Energy was conserved. People followed hearthlight, not daylight. Work shifted. More crafting, mending, weaving, storytelling. Less action, more preservation. But how they coped mentally is debated. Did they suffer seasonal depression? Probably. They didn't call it that. They blamed spirits, gods, or omens. Maybe they just called it winter mood and pushed through. Some researchers think they turned to rituals, burning special herbs, offering tokens, even sacrificing animals to beg for the sun's return. Others think they drank more and told creepier tales. You shuffle toward the hearth, aching, head heavy. Moving through a room lit only by fire glow and gray sky feels eerie, like the world is suspended. Your hands look pale, as if you're slowly becoming snow. Elders might have had counters, songs to chase gloom, chants to invite the sun, or simply bigger fires and tighter gatherings so no one slipped too far into their own head. And the quirky detail, some Vikings used sunstones, crystals like Iceland's spar, to find the sun even when hidden. The stones refracted light and hinted at direction through cloud or snow haze. How well they worked is debated, maybe reserved for navigators. But the idea of magical rocks to locate a missing sun is the kind of lore you embrace by week 3 of darkness. You wrap your cloak tighter and step outside, though every instinct screams no. Snow crunches with a hollow, icy sound. The sky hangs low and heavy, a smothering sheet that feels ready to collapse. No sun, only a faint lighter patch where daylight pretends to exist. You stare, daring it to warm you. It doesn't care. Trees groan in the wind. The barn lies half buried. A distant dog barks once, then silence. Even your breath sounds tired. And still, you feel a small pride. You're here. Not cheerful, not thriving, but still here. Another sunless night survived. Another day of gray waiting. Inside, someone lights a second fire for brightness. Another arranges polished bone into runes, hoping for guidance or distraction. No one names the sun, as if saying it aloud might jinx its return. You lie back down, eyes half closed, listening to the murmurs of people finding ways to pass time. There's something intimate about surviving this much dark together. It makes you honest, quiet, a little odd. Maybe that's what makes Viking winters bearable. Not strength or heat, but community. You drift towards sleep, wondering if the sun ever feels guilty for abandoning you. Probably not. You dream of warmth, a sunlit field, honey on bread, someone laughing just out of view. Then something shifts. Not in the dream, in the room. A sound, low, dragging. Not quite wind, not animals. Something else. You blink awake into gray blur. There it is again. A muffled thump outside. Then silence. Then another. Closer. Deliberate. Heavy. You sit up, heart tapping faster. Maybe no one else has noticed. Or they're pretending not to. Vikings didn't just fear cold. They feared what came with it. When nights stretch without end, and wind never stops whispering, it's easy to think it's whispering to something. In the old tales, the ones told softly by the fire, there are things that listen, things that move in the dark when humans can't, things that wait for light to vanish. You throw on your cloak and edge to the door. No one stops you. That's the winter rule. If someone's brave enough to check, you let them. The latch clacks. You pull the door just wide enough to see. Nothing. Just snow, pale and shapeless in half-light. No footprints, no figures, only wind sculpting strange shapes. Then, just as you're closing it, you hear it again. A low growl, not animal, not quite human, and this time not distant at all. It sounds like it's waiting. You step back fast and bar the door. Nobody laughs. Nobody says it was a dream. They've heard the stories, too. This is Draugr season, the time the dead walk. Draugr aren't your average ghosts. Not see-through, not wisps. They're reanimated corpses. Bloated, cold, reeking of seawater and moss. Dead Vikings who didn't stay buried because something pulled them back. They claw from their mounds, angry, jealous of the living. Full of ice and spite and curses, they break into houses, crush sleepers in their beds, and bring with them cold and, worse, bad luck that lingers. You glance at the rafters where old bones hang. Tiny skulls tied with twine, charms cut with runes, herbs that crackle softly in heat. These are protections, you've been told. Offerings, warnings, a raven bone to confuse a Draugr's sense of direction, a scrap of iron to block its path. You hope it's enough. Here's a true historical nugget. Viking burials sometimes included measures to keep the dead from rising. Stones on the chest to pin the body, iron scissors tucked into the grave, nails driven into the soles to keep a corpse from walking. Not metaphor, insurance. Back at the fire, someone starts a story. Not an epic, but a warning tale. A man who died in deep winter and was buried too shallow because the ground was iron. They say he came back 3 nights later, face purple, eyes gone, pounding the door until someone dared open it. They say he wandered the fields for weeks before anyone found courage to burn his bones. The room goes silent. Even the child chewing a wooden spoon stops. That's how fear works here. Creeping in like the cold, soft at first, then total. Worst of all, there's no disproving it. You can't check the graveyard. It's buried and forgotten till spring. Anything could be out there. Anyone. Scholars debate how literally Vikings took such undead lore. Some say Draugr symbolized unburied guilt, unfinished business, generational curses. Others believe people truly feared the dead might rise, especially the wronged, the disgraced, or the poorly buried. Given the burial customs and the tales passed down, someone was taking restless dead very seriously. And of course, there were other terrors. The Mara, riding your chest at night. The Huldra, a forest spirit with a hollow back and a cow's tail. Trolls in mountains, starting avalanches when disturbed. But the Draugr were special because they had been you, a Viking, fierce, now twisted into something cold and hollow. Someone pinches ash into the fire, a ritual gesture. Others murmur charms, words inherited from parents and grandparents. You find yourself repeating them too, barely understanding. They taste like iron and old snow. The door stays barred tonight. 2 people take shifts to keep watch, tending the fire, listening. Everyone else curls back under furs, feet tucked close to borrowed warmth. You try to sleep, but that sound returns in your mind. The growl, the lack of tracks. You close your eyes and see a face, swollen and blue, framed in ice. Just a story, you insist. Then again, so was Ragnarok once. You drift into the uneasy half-sleep of someone who knows the door may not be enough. Who knows that sometimes winter doesn't just want you cold, it wants you gone. You wake to creaking overhead. Not the usual groan of a roof under snow, something with a pattern, like slow footsteps testing weight. You hold your breath and listen harder. Nothing, just the pop of the hearth and a soft snore across the room. You tell yourself it's the wind, or wood settling, or maybe a goat on the roof. Don't laugh, it happens. But a stubborn part of your mind won't buy it, because you remember what someone said last night. The ancestors live in the rafters. In the soft, unsettling stillness of a Viking winter, spiritual survival isn't just tradition, it's policy. These people saw the world stacked in layers, the living, the dead, and the in-between. The Longhouse wasn't merely a home, it was a meeting place between realms. On long, cold nights, when the physical feels brittle and uncertain, the spiritual bleeds through. You sit up slowly, scanning the shadows above. Wooden beams crisscross the ceiling like the ribs of a ship, blackened by decades of smoke and soot. Tucked up there are bundles of dried herbs, tools, small woven charms. And yes, bones. Tiny ones. Birds. Maybe a mouse. Maybe not a mouse. You're not sure, and you're not asking. These aren't decorations. They're offerings, wards, signs. In this house, the dead are never far. Vikings believed ancestors could protect you, or punish you, depending on how you behaved. Keep the hearth alive. Maintain the rites, honor the dead, and you'll be watched over. But ignore tradition, disrespect the old ways, and, well, creaking in the rafters might be the least of your problems. There's a worn post near the center of the room, thicker than the others, darker, smoother to the touch. That's the envola, the high seat post. It's more than a support beam. It's sacred, carved with symbols you can't quite make out, stained by years of hands brushing it in passing. Legend says some of these posts held relics of the family line fragments of bone, hair, or ash hidden inside and passed down like secrets. Not just a post, then, but a vessel, a presence. Historical fact. When Norse settlers left their homelands to cross the sea, especially to Iceland, they sometimes threw their high-seat posts overboard as they neared land. Wherever the sea carried the post to shore, that's where they would build their new home. It wasn't about luck. It was guidance, trusting fate to the spirit in the wood. You shift uneasily, recalling how you leaned against that post last night to warm your back. You wonder if someone noticed. You wonder if someone should have warned you first. But maybe that's part of it being tested. The ancestors didn't protect the lazy or the clueless. If you wanted their favor, you showed you deserved it. And that meant rituals. Simple ones, mostly. Keep the fire fed. Speak their names aloud. Pour a few drops of ale into the earth as an offering. Don't throw bones into the fire. Burning animal bones could offend certain spirits. Don't whistle after dark. Don't sing loudly during storms. Basically, don't act like a disrespectful fool and expect your warrior grandparents' ghosts to babysit you. The woman across the fire is braiding her hair slowly. You watch her, waiting for someone to explain what happened last night, what they all think happened. No one brings it up. No one mentions the sound on the roof, the stories, the draugr. This is how the community handles fear, quietly, carefully. It's not denial. It's about not inviting it. The air inside feels heavy today. Not just cold, but dense. You get the feeling something's expected of you, but you don't know what. Someone hands you a chunk of dried fish and a hunk of cold bread. You chew without tasting. It's not about flavor. It's about not dying. Here's a quirky Viking detail. Sometimes they kept the skulls of animals, or people tucked in the corners of the longhouse for luck or protection. A horse skull behind the wall, a goat's head on a post. The logic: if an animal gave its life to feed or serve the household, its spirit might continue to guard it. So the bones stayed close, sometimes a little too close. There's debate among scholars about how literally the Vikings treated these practices. Some argue belief in spirits and ancestors was symbolic, meant to unify families, reinforce tradition, keep folks in line. Others insist these weren't just cozy stories. They were serious, cosmological truths, real dangers, real rules. You didn't believe because it was quaint. You believed because you'd seen too many people break rules and not wake up the next morning. You step outside later that afternoon, needing air, even if it hurts to breathe. The snow is silent. There are no tracks, just white stretching out in all directions, smoothed flat by the wind. Above, the sky hangs pale and low, almost greenish with frost. You stare up at the roof of the longhouse, half expecting to spot a shadow clinging there. Nothing. But the wood up top is disturbed, cracked, slightly split, like something pressed down hard from above. You go back inside without a word. Later, before bed, someone sets a bowl of porridge near the door. Not for the dogs, not for the people. Placed carefully, reverently. You watch steam lift in the cold air, the smell drifting toward the open rafters. No one says why. They don't have to. You curl up again, back to the wall, watching the dark above. The fire crackles, and the bones shift slightly in their bundles. You close your eyes and hope the ancestors are in a good mood tonight. You've survived wolves, snow, hunger, and maybe even a draugr. But surviving the silence of the dead, that takes a different kind of strength. You wake to laughter. Not wild, chaotic laughter, but the kind that rolls low and warm through the room, like coals glowing under ash. It catches you off guard. Laughter here now, after weeks of cold and darkness, and tales of corpse beasts knocking at your door. But yes, it's real. Someone chuckles by the fire, and a child giggles through a mouthful of barley mash. Suddenly, the longhouse feels different, brighter, looser. The air, still sharp with smoke and damp wool, carries something sweeter. Today is Yule not the red and green jingling bells version. No sleighs, no sweaters, no inflatable reindeer. This is the old Yule, the deep, wild Viking version, half holy day, half full survival party. And after everything you've endured, it feels like a prize. Yule isn't just a celebration, it's defiance, a midwinter middle finger to the long night. You're still here. You haven't frozen, starved, or been dragged off by spirits. So you feast, you sing, you remember the dead, honor the gods, and drink until your bones stop aching. You sit up slowly, already warmer from the mood in the room. The fire is blazing, larger than usual, and someone has laid evergreen boughs across the beams. The smell is sharp and clean, a reminder that something still grows out there under the snow. The longhouse has shifted from shelter to hall. Still cramped, still smoky, but humming with something ancient and electric. People move with more energy. Someone's roasting a pig over the fire, its skin crackling and popping like a drumbeat. There are loaves of bread with actual herbs in them. Flavor. And someone's brought out dried apples and nuts. You didn't even know those were an option. Turns out they've been hoarding them for weeks, saving the good stuff for today. You've got food, fire, and fermented drink. And suddenly you understand why this tradition mattered so much. Yule isn't only about the present. It's grabbing hope with both frostbitten hands. The solstice has passed. The darkest day is behind you. Light is returning inch by frozen inch. And the Vikings marked that shift with feasting and fire, ritual and riot. Here's your historical anchor. Yule, Joel, was originally a midwinter festival that predated Christianity. It lasted at least 12 days, sometimes more, depending on who you were and how much ale you had. It honored the gods Odin most prominently, but also remembered the dead and tightened bonds among the living. Think ancestor veneration meets end-of-the-world potluck. You're handed a wooden cup of mead, warm, sweet, shockingly strong. It numbs your lips and burns just enough on the way down. Around you, people clap and sing old songs in a language you barely follow. A man jumps up and performs a quick, stumbling dance that ends with him knocking over a bench. No one's angry. This is part of it. Laughter keeps you human. But it's not all fun. There's ceremony too. At the far end of the hall, someone lights a candle and sets it before a carved wooden idol rough, crude, unmistakably divine. Odin, maybe, or Freya. You're not sure. The figure stares back, features half lit by flame. Offerings are laid down. A slice of meat, a splash of ale, a lock of hair. You watch in silence. Even the children go quiet. There's reverence inside the chaos. It isn't all noise. A woman beside you murmurs that the Yule celebration is also for the Disir, the female ancestors who watch over the family line. They're honored with toasts, songs, and sometimes blood sacrifices. You nod slowly, hoping this year's version stops at toasts and songs. Quirky fact, some Viking families kept a Yule log burning continuously through the holiday, believing that if it went out, bad luck, or worse, would follow. The log had to be chosen carefully, often from sacred trees, and tended like a heartbeat. You look at the enormous piece of wood, resting in the hearth now split from a long-dead oak and smoldering steadily. No one is letting that go out. And then come the ghost stories. Because of course, in proper Viking fashion, Yule is also when the dead walk most freely. It's the season of the wild hunt. Odin himself is said to ride the sky with a pack of ghostly hunters, sweeping over rooftops with glowing eyes and howling wolves. If you hear hooves at night during Yule, you don't look, you don't answer the door, you don't follow. If you do, you might not come back. Scholars still debate whether the wild hunt was understood as literal danger or a cautionary tale. Some say it was a metaphor for winter storms, the chaos and peril of the season. Others think people truly believed spectral riders could snatch your soul if you stepped outside at the wrong moment. Honestly, after living here this long, you're ready to believe anything. As night wears on, the mood shifts again, from celebratory to mystical. Someone recites a poem, voice low and steady. The fire seems to dim like it's listening. People close their eyes. The rhythm is hypnotic. The verses speak of death and rebirth, of winter's grip and the sun's slow return. You don't know the words, but the meaning curls into your chest like smoke. You glance around. Faces are flushed with drink and warmth, yet eyes are clear, alert. This isn't mindless revelry. It's remembering those who didn't survive last winter, those buried under mounds, now iced over and still. Names are spoken so they won't be forgotten. You raise your cup, following the others, and drink deep. Yule isn't joy without cost. It's joy in spite of the cost. That's what makes it holy. As you fall asleep that night, belly full, cheeks warm, fire steady, you feel something like peace, the kind that's earned, the kind that only comes after weeks of frost, hunger, fear, and silence. You've lived long enough to celebrate, and that, in Viking winter, is a kind of miracle. The Yule fire is still burning the next morning, crackling with stubborn pride. The celebration has settled into something more thoughtful. The mead haze is thinning, and your stomach is full of regret and half-digested pork fat. Outside, snow has drifted again, soft and deep muting the world into near silence. The air feels changed, not just colder, but charged, as if the night left more than ashes and greasy plates, something unseen, something watching. You've heard whispers by now about the Sade Kona, the wise woman, the witch one who speaks with the unseen. They say during Yule, the veil between worlds is thinnest. Spirits pass more easily. Dreams grow teeth. And some people born to it can tug on the threads of fate with a glance or a chant or a single well-placed bone. Today, the Sade Kona is visiting. She arrives without fanfare. No wolves, no thunder, no fireballs, just a dark shape in the snow, wrapped in layered cloaks, walking with a carved staff taller than she is. Her face is lined and unreadable, her eyes sharp and small beneath a fur hood. You half expect her to vanish when you blink, but she doesn't. She steps inside, shakes snow from her boots, and is immediately given the best seat by the fire. No one speaks until she does. Seder the Vikings' magic was never taken lightly. It wasn't sleight of hand or party tricks. It was raw, unpredictable, and feared. Practitioners were rare, often isolated, sometimes distrusted, especially men. Magic was seen as a woman's domain. A man who practiced it risked being labeled ergi unmanly, shameful. Odin himself, king of the gods, was said to have learned cedar from a goddess. Even he caught side-eye for it. The Sade Kona sits with eyes half closed. She could be sleeping, gathering thoughts, or listening to something none of you can hear. Someone offers her a bowl of stew. She doesn't take it. Instead, she unwraps a leather pouch and lays things out on the floor. Bones, stones, bits of iron, a small bundle of hair tied with red thread. The room stills. Even the babies stop fussing. You watch her with the cautious awe reserved for people who might kill you with a song. She begins to hum, not a tune exactly, but a rhythm, like wind pretending to speak. Her fingers move in patterns over the objects. Sometimes she speaks. You can't understand the words, but you feel their shape, like smoke curling in your ears. Then she gestures. Not a name, and a woman steps forward. Middle-aged, quiet, always watchful, rarely speaking. You'd barely noticed her until now. The Sade Kona studies her long and hard, then speaks again. It sounds like a question. The woman nods once, and just like that they vanish into the back corner of the longhouse, hidden by firs and shadow. No one comments. You don't ask. It's not how this works. Historical fact incoming. Satyr was used for divination, healing, cursing, and bending fate. A Sade Kona could bless a birth, hex a rival, or foretell a voyage. They used chants, galder, ritual tools, sometimes animal sacrifice. Some Norse sources praised their power. Others hinted at fear, jealousy, and danger. The line between respect and suspicion was razor thin. You edge closer to the fire, pretending you're just cold. Everyone does the same, huddling together under the guise of comfort while really trying not to be noticed. There's tension in the air, like if anyone speaks too loudly, the spell will snap and something hungry will wake. And here's the quirky detail. Some believed Sade Kona could travel in spirit during rites. Bodies lying still, trance-quiet, while their souls wandered the world or other worlds. Some accounts call it soul journeying, where the practitioner might speak with the dead, see distant events, even tug at the weather. You're not saying she just hexed a snowstorm for fun, but the wind outside picked up since she arrived. There's ongoing debate about whether Satyr was real magic or psychological therapy, communal guidance, potent placebo. Some say the rites provided structured catharsis. Others point to shamanistic parallels worldwide and say, no, these people weren't pretending they believed. And when enough people believe, reality tends to bend. The woman returns an hour later, pale and silent. She doesn't speak, just sits by the hearth, eyes wide and wet. The Sade Kona follows a moment after, face blank, pouch already packed. She doesn't need thanks, doesn't wait for it. She simply nods to the fire, then the door, and leaves. The room exhales. You sit with that silence a long time, listening to the crackle, watching snow slide down the outer wall in slow, lazy curls. You don't know what changed today, but something did. Maybe a curse lifted. Maybe a message delivered. Maybe a child's sickness given a name and a path to healing. Or maybe nothing at all. Just performance in a long line of performances meant to lend people the illusion of control in a world that refuses to be controlled. Deep down, though, you don't buy that. Something shifted, and the wind agrees. Later, someone tells a story about a Sade Kona who turned a Viking warrior into a wolf for refusing to honor his dead father. Another swears their grandmother saw a Sayed storm so wild it tore a longhouse roof free. Someone else merely nods, eyes fixed on the dancing fire. You wrap your cloak tight and lie back down. Magic or not, the world feels heavier, and you feel safer, like someone's guarding the threshold now, someone who doesn't need weapons to fight. You fall asleep, dreaming of strange runes drawn in ash and snow, and a voice whispering secrets you'll never quite remember. Sleep doesn't last long, not from fear this time, or a draft sneaking under the furs, but because someone is sharpening a blade. The sound is unmistakable, slow, rhythmic metal on stone, and it drags you from dreams like a hand gripping your collar. You open your eyes to flickering firelight and a long, lean shadow skating across the far wall. One of the men young, broad-shouldered, face half hidden by a scraggly beard, sits with his sword across his lap, working the edge with patient care. Not frantic, not angry focused. And you know what that means. They're training today. Even now, even in this snow piled high, wind howling like it's in morning, temperatures low enough to make steel scream if left too long in the open, none of it matters. Vikings didn't pause war prep because the world was frozen. Winter was often the best time to train. Less farm work, fewer distractions, and what better way to stay warm than swinging a weapon like you mean it? You sit up and groan softly as your joints complain. Your muscles ache. Not the walk too far ache, but the kind from constantly bracing against cold. Still, curiosity nudges you. You pull on boots, cloak, gloves, and then someone else's gloves over yours. Nobody's checking and step outside. The light stabs your eyes at first. Not sunlight, there isn't any. But the white snow reflects enough gray sky to make everything glow faintly, as if the world were lit from beneath by a cold, cruel lamp. You trudge to the open area behind the longhouse, where a dozen figures gather. Men, women, even an older teen who looks like he only recently stopped crying when his toes got cold. They hold spears, axes, wooden practice swords. One man is shirtless, of course. There's always one. Steam rises off his back like he's made of volcanoes and bad decisions. Today's drills begin with Shield Wall's classic. You've seen it in stories, maybe films, but up close it's different. Not elegant, not glamorous, loud, chaotic, messy. People slam into each other with real force, testing their grip on the ice underfoot. They shout, grunt, fall. One woman slips, drops her shield, and nearly gets trampled. No one stops. She pops up, shakes snow from her hair, and snaps back into line. That's the point. Winter warfare wasn't a romantic, glittering ballet. It was survival with spikes. If you could fight in this, if you could win in this, you could do anything. History drop. Vikings didn't universally pause campaigns in winter the way some societies did. Sailing was limited frozen harbors and rough seas, but land raids and local skirmishes still happened. Snow-choked forests made perfect ambush ground. Frozen lakes became fast, direct highways to enemy settlements. Snow was a tool. Ice was strategy. Back in the training yard, really a clearing trodden flat by feet and shovels. Someone is showing off a pair of lang axes, long single-edged knives. He scythes them through the air, then buries both in a frozen log and exhales. Nearby, two others spar with wooden staves. Their grunts punctuate the thwack of impact and the occasional yelp when a blow lands too hard. No helmets today, just thick skulls and pure ego. But it's not all brute strength. An older warrior runs drills for the youngest, walking in a crouch, breath held, stones balanced on the backs of their hands. Stealth, agility, balance crucial if you plan to sneak up on people whose entire house literally listens for threats in the dark. Quirky bit, Vikings were likely early adopters of skis in combat. Not Olympic downhill, but narrow wooden boards that let them glide over snow faster than any poor foot slogger. Sagas mention ski troops, warriors moving ghost quiet over drifts, arrows ready. Some historians think this gave a massive winter edge, especially in surprise raids. Others argue ski combat was rare heroic exaggeration more than daily warfare. Archaeological ski fragments and stylized carvings suggest winter mobility was no joke. Either way, you now look at the snowfield differently. What seems a hindrance could be a weapon. You take a staff when someone offers and step into line, half committed. Your first swing is slow and wide, sloppy. You nearly tag your own knee, but no one mocks you. Everyone here was awful once. The person across from you, a woman, once she lifts her hood grins. She jabs low. You block too high. She taps your ribs. Try not to yelp. After 10 minutes, your hands are numb. After 20, they burn. After 30, you've forgotten you were ever cold. That's the trick. Movement isn't just exercise, it's survival. It keeps blood moving, limbs alert, fear quiet. When you fight in the cold, you stop being cold. You become something else. A furnace wrapped in frozen leather and grim resolve. The drill ends with everyone forming a loose circle. They toss snow into the air, shouting a chant that's part battle cry, part joke. Someone slips and lands flat. Laughter erupts. The firewood pile groans under fresh snow. For a moment, the world feels light again. You walk back to the longhouse, sore but energized, carrying the staff like it belongs to you now. Your breath fogs before your face, and for once you're not trying to outrun the cold. You've met it head-on, wrestled it, maybe earned its respect. Inside, the fire feels warmer than usual, not because it burns hotter, but because you do. And when the next storm comes, and it will, you'll be ready. You wake to a sound you haven't heard in weeks. Laughter. Small, shrill, unstoppable. Not from warriors or elders, or the overworked women who never stop spinning wool. From the smallest creatures in the longhouse, the children. Not just one, either. A pack of them tumbles like wolf pups across the packed earth floor, bundled in so many layers of wool and fur that they bounce when they fall. Someone tosses a crust of stale bread. Two scramble for it like it's a rare jewel. It is, in its way. You sit up slowly, watching with equal parts amusement and disbelief. How are they not frozen solid? How are they awake? But of course, this is their world. Born into winter, raised under dark skies, and surrounded by smoke, steam, and stories. They know nothing else. While you've been surviving, they've been living loudly, wildly, joyfully. Childhood in the Viking Age wasn't all sword practice and tiny horned helmets, though you do spot one kid with a makeshift helm bent from a cooking pot. Adorable and terrifying. Mostly it was a tug-of-war between play and work. In deep winter, with fewer chores and little room to run, imagination exploded like frost on glass. Two boys duel with carved sticks, complete with sound effects far too enthusiastic. A girl sits in a corner, weaving with surprising precision, tiny fingers flying. She spun more wool in 9 years than you will in your life. Another child, barely out of toddlerhood, drags a chicken by the foot. The chicken seems mildly resigned. Viking kids didn't get luxury. Toys were carved from bone or wood. Horses, ships, figures, sometimes whistles or spinning tops. Nothing fancy. Everything mattered. A carved figure could be a warrior, a god, a dragon. A bone could be a rattle, a game piece, or a blunt projectile. When negotiations between siblings fail, one girl dumps a handful of snow into a boy's hood while he's not looking. He turns indignant and launches a counterattack snow mixed with hay. There's screaming, running, someone tripping over a sleeping dog. No one intervenes. The adults barely glance up. This is the noise of life continuing. Let them shriek. Historically, Viking children had to grow up fast. Infant mortality was high. About half didn't survive past 5. Those who did were tough. Not just eat dirt and never cry. Tough, though they probably ate dirt. But haul water at 6, herd goats at 7, gut a fish by 8. Tough. Even so, winter gave them something precious. Time. With farming paused, travel dangerous, and most adults stuck inside, children had more freedom to play, to observe, to learn by osmosis. You notice one boy watching an elder sharpen a blade, mimicking the motion with a stick. Another listens as 2 women recite a saga, eyes wide, lips shaping the lines. These aren't distractions, they're training. Cultural downloads, Norse edition. Here's a historical gem. Sagas and finds suggest Viking kids were given miniature versions of adult tools, not just toys, but early skill builders. Tiny axes, toy boats, even scaled-down shields. The line between game and preparation was thin. That pretend sword fight by the hearth. It's fun now, muscle memory later when danger is real. One boy slips and smacks his head on a beam. He doesn't cry, just checks if anyone saw, then goes back to throwing pine cones. You make eye contact. He grins, gap-toothed, like a wolf cub who knows he'll own the forest someday. And now the quirky fact, Viking lullabies were dark. Go to sleep, or trolls will steal your eyes. Dark. Many old Norse bedtime songs warned about wolves, the sea, ghosts. One reconstructed lullaby even mentions ravens pecking the bones of naughty children. Sweet dreams, right? But that's the point. Fear was baked into childhood, not to scar them, but to teach them. The world was dangerous. Cold could kill. Woods held secrets. Stories and songs didn't shield kids from fear. They taught them to live with it, to laugh at it, to grow teeth of their own. You watch as one of the older children gathers the rest into a circle and starts a tale. Not from a book, there are none, but from memory. His voice rises and falls in perfect imitation of the skald. The story's familiar. Some hero tricking a frost giant and stealing back the sun. You lean in unconsciously. Everyone does. Even the toddler with the chicken stops to listen. There's debate among scholars about how much agency Viking children had. Some argue they were expected to be mini-adults fast. Others think their play was encouraged, cherished, even as long as it didn't interfere with work or survival. From what you've seen, it's not either or. These kids play hard, and they learn through it. Every game, story, and chore builds someone who can swing an axe by 12 and run a household by 15. Snow outside keeps falling. The world stays locked in ice. But inside the longhouse you see the future. Sprint barefoot across the floor, chasing a goat with a stick, giggling at ghosts, reciting stories like they were born knowing them. You smile, rubbing soreness from your hands, and settle back against the wall. Let the children be loud today. Winter is still long, but now you know it isn't lifeless. It's making room for the next generation of survivors. You start to notice it more now. The silence. Not the peaceful, no one's yelling kind of silence. This is deeper, older, the kind of quiet that feels like it's listening to you. After weeks of smoke, laughter, children fighting over goat bones, and the general din of people living shoulder to shoulder in one big wooden loaf of a house, quiet turns suddenly sharp. It starts in the early hours. The fire's low, the room still. For a few minutes you hear nothing. No shifting bodies, no coughs, no crackling wood. Just the wind pushing itself around outside, trying to find a way in. And then you realize that is the sound. The wind creaking the timbers. The occasional thump of snow sliding off the roof. It becomes your soundtrack. Kind of cold, slow music you never signed up for. It's not just the longhouse. Outside, silence swallows footsteps, hides the rustle of animals, and mutes the crash of ice-bent branches. You hold your breath more often, walk slower, listen harder. Out here, silence isn't peaceful. It's suspense, like the world has paused to see what you'll do next. There's a forest nearby, thick with pine and birch. One morning you're sent to collect kindling along its edge. You go alone, bundled and begrudging, boots crunching the hard-packed trail. At the trees, something shifts. The air grows heavier. Your own footsteps sound too loud. When you stop, the silence hits full force, so complete it feels unnatural. You look around, half expecting eyes on you. No one's there, and yet the trees seem to lean in anyway. Then you hear it, creak, a snap. No, just snow slipping from a deeper branch. It still knots your gut. You gather kindling fast and leave without turning your back on the woods. One historical detail worth knowing. Vikings believed the natural world was alive, not metaphorically, literally. Forests had spirits, mountains had moods, waterfalls could speak if you listened hard enough. That wasn't superstition, it was survival. If the land felt wrong, you left, or you left an offering and begged it not to notice you. Silence in the woods wasn't emptiness, it was presence. Some scholars argue Viking spirituality wasn't just gods and afterlives, but an intimate relationship with the surroundings, the land as a character, and a dangerous one. Others say we romanticize it, that stories explained landslides, wolf attacks, or why Bjorn fell through a frozen lake. Either way, the belief shaped behavior, and you, right now, are walking faster because of it. Back in the longhouse, the silence carries inside, too. On storm days, voices drop. Conversations become murmurs. It's not denial, it's respect. You sit near the fire and close your eyes. There's sound inside the silence if you listen. The groan of wood, the tick of collapsing embers, the slow sigh of someone sleeping. A lullaby of a house that feels alive, breathing, stretching, creaking as it holds everyone together. Quirky fact incoming. Vikings believed houses could have spirits called husvetter, not ghosts or gods, but home protectors. Treat them well and they keep fires from dying and doors from freezing shut. Neglect them and they might sour the food or snap your bootlaces just as you step into a neck-deep drift. You respect the house because it's watching. At night, the silence deepens, literally. No sunlight, no insects, no machines, no nightlife beyond snoring. Darkness becomes a weight. Under the furs, you try not to breathe too loud. Even the fire seems to lower its voice. Your mind drifts to remembered sounds, running water, bird calls, city traffic, the soft hum of lights, all those background safety nets you didn't know you had. Here you get nothing, and that nothing is unsettling. In the morning you ask if people get used to the silence. The man shrugs. No, but it's better than screaming. Don't ask him to explain. The children fight it their way, banging sticks, singing nonsense, howling with glee. And the adults rarely stop them. Instinct, maybe. Make noise before the quiet gets into your bones. Scholars debate how sound shaped daily life without engines or electricity. Were senses sharper, tuned to wind pitch, animal behavior, the crunch of different boots on snow? Or did people simply tune out to survive? Either way, in a world this quiet, every creak, every breath, every shift in the air matters. That night, the wind dies, and snow hangs in the air like held breath. You lie awake longer than usual, not cold, not hungry, not afraid, just still. And in that stillness, something clicks. The silence isn't empty. It's full of everything that used to be here, and everything still trying to be. You exhale slowly. The fire cracks once, soft, and the house answers with a tiny creak, like it heard you. It starts as a joke. A boy grabs a bucket of boiling water, runs outside, and hurls it into the air. Poof, instant snow. A white cloud of steam and ice crystals, gone before it hits the ground. Everyone cheers. It's objectively cool, yes, but it's also control, turning cold into something playful. In Viking winter, that feeling is rare. Soon there's a line. Boil, run, toss, hiss, a glittering burst that vanishes midair. It becomes a contest. Biggest mist cloud, best throw, farthest sprint in the least clothing before the water flash freezes. Someone gets sloppy and coats their boots in lukewarm slush. Everyone laughs. For the first time in days, you're not just surviving, you're playing. Vikings must have done the same. Little acts of mischief and defiance. Wrestling, stone lifting, tug of war, swimming in freezing water, racing barefoot on ice. Not because they had to, because they could. One saga even brags about a man who could piss a hole in the snow deep enough to bury an axe. Classy? No. On brand? Absolutely. Cold or not, they owned it. You try the boiling water, toss yourself, and watch the burst bloom overhead like an ethereal spirit. For half a second it hangs there, weightless, then dissolves. Cheers. Bow. Someone points out the air is too dry. The squeaky snow kind, powdery and unwilling to clump. Bad for sledding, worse for building. Your boots squeal like old leather. Weather science, Viking style. No thermometers, just attention. Hoarfrost shapes, smoke angles, cloud movement, animal behavior. Not perfect. Plenty of ships still iced in unexpectedly, but often good enough to become tradition. The man beside you squints at the sky, a pale haze glowing at the edges like a candle behind frosted glass. Ice fog tonight, he mutters. Sleep with your boots under the blanket, or you'll be cursing at dawn. By midday, your face aches from smiling. You trail slush and laughter back inside to stew that actually smells faintly of garlic. Later, someone tells the story of the coldest night they ever survived. Bark stripped from trees by wind. 2 houses buried so deep, it took days to dig them out. No one interrupts. It's not for applause. It's a reminder. Your boots dry by the hearth, shelled in a thin sheen of ice. Warmth is precious and temporary. Still, today you didn't just endure the cold. You mocked it. Maybe that's the secret. Not brute strength. Not endless layers of wool and leather and fat. But play. That rebellious joy that says, yes, it's freezing. And I'm still going to throw boiling water into the sky just to watch it fly. You fall asleep grinning, cheeks tingling, dreams full of steam, snow, and your own laughter echoing into the frost. At first you barely notice the sound. Soft, rhythmic, distant, leather on wood, muffled beneath the snowpack. You're wrestling the barn latch when it reaches you. Not wind, not a wolf, something man-made. You freeze. There it is again. And then, out of the trees, they glide. Skiers. Actual Viking skiers. They come in pairs, tall shapes hunched slightly forward, long wooden boards strapped to their feet, poles tucked like spears. They move with eerie grace, no bouncing, no huffing, just smooth, silent momentum. Cloaks rippling, boots lashed tight, breath steaming like dragon smoke. They slide past without a glance and disappear into the forest like snow ghosts. You stand there, slack-jawed. Of course, the Vikings figured out how to cross this frozen nightmare in style. Inside, you ask. Someone shrugs. Ski patrol. They check traps, scout paths, visit farms. They hunt that way too. Stealthy, fast, efficient. Try sneaking up on a deer in 3 feet of snow without skis. Good luck. The record backs it up. Scandinavians were using skis long before most of Europe caught on. Preserved fragments from as early as the 500s. Bindings, grooved undersides. Primitive, clever. Skiing wasn't sport. It was transport, warfare, survival. In some regions, people trained on skis the way others trained with swords. The word ski meant split piece of wood, but in practice, it meant power. Later, you step outside in your usual boots and your usual regrets. Slip, stomp, mutter apologies to the ancestors when one of the patrol glides by, considers you, and tosses a battered pair at your feet. No ceremony, just figure it out. You strap in with cold fingers and promptly collapse into a snowbank. Again and again. By the 4th try, you're moving, barely. Wobbly as a deer on stilts, flailing like a poet on ice. But you're faster than on foot, and that counts. A patrolman slides past backward just to show off. You don't hate him for it. Much. By evening, your bruised knees and snow-stuffed gloves earn equal parts mockery and respect. Someone offers a drink. Someone else offers a boiled sock. You hope that one's a joke. By the fire, a story. A scout who skied 30 miles to warn a village of a raid, beating the attackers by half a day. The locals were ready. He didn't survive, but his skis hung in the hall as a sign of loyalty. Or maybe to remind everyone that heroism looks like blisters more often than ballads. Historians argue how widespread ski warfare was. Maybe limited to far north regions where Sami skiers led the way. Maybe quickly adopted elsewhere. Either way, it left a mark. The sagas remember winter gods on wooden wings. Quirky fact, wax. Some skiers rubbed animal fat or pine resin on their boards to cut friction. Not Olympic grade, but brilliant for its time. You peel off your boots and inspect the damage. Blisters, bruises, something that might be frostnip. Feel that strange pride again. You didn't master skiing. You got closer to the land, closer to the people who move as if the snow belongs to them. Closer to a version of you that doesn't panic when a boot sinks to the ankle. Tomorrow you'll try again. Maybe soon you'll be the one gliding past the longhouse. Breath a pale banner, skis whispering like you were born to ride ice. You wake in the dark with no idea what time it is. Midnight, 4 in the afternoon. Time has officially given up. The fire's low, shadows long across the rafters. Everyone's sleeping, more or less. Some snore, some mutter. A few lie wide-eyed, swallowed by the dark. You try to sleep, you really do. The mind buzzes. Loops of odd thoughts. Did you leave your boots too close to the fire? Was the snow talking again? Is someone whispering? Or is that just the wind? You pull the blanket tight. The real problem hits. You're not tired when you should be. That's how it happens. The sun disappears. You promise yourself you'll sleep more, but rhythms collapse. You wake at odd hours, sleep when you shouldn't, dream half awake, shadows, snow, things with too many eyes. Welcome to Viking insomnia. You're not alone. One man paces slow circles as if hunted by something only he can hear. A woman mutters while she spins thread, hands automatic, gaze far away. Even the goats are restless. The dogs won't sleep through the night. Ask about it in the morning and you get a shrug. Winter dreams. Too much dark. It confuses the mind. And that's that. Scholars today talk polar night and mental health. Back then there were no charts, just intuition and superstition. When people acted strange, no one diagnosed them. They told stories, blamed spirits, cracked jokes, slept when they could, dreamed when they couldn't, paid attention when the dreams sharpened. The sagas are full of night visions, wolves in shadow, women with wings instead of arms, trees growing upside down from the sky. Not dismissed as dreams, omens. Winter was fertile ground for them. Sleep less, dream more. Not the inspirational kind, the wake-up sweating kind. You've had them. The longhouse upside down, the snow speaking in your voice, the door that keeps knocking but never opens. Quirky fact, berserkers, trance fighters, were said to draw power from visions, sleep deprivation, spirits. Modern theories talk extreme fatigue, fasting, certain herbs. One old poem hints that dreams of wolves and blood made warriors stronger. Maybe your dreams are training. Halfway to berserker already. Tonight, you give up on sleep, step over the snorers, and push the door open. The cold slaps you awake. The sky is black and star-studded, points so sharp they could cut you. The snow mirrors them faintly. For a moment, it's beautiful. Then you realize what's missing. No moon, no wind. Just silence and you. You sit in the snow with your back against the wall and look up. Breath curls into the sky. Thoughts go with it. Water made of light. Your grandmother's voice in the fire. Your own shadow asking if you want to leave. The latch clicks. An older woman steps out in a cloak stitched like night. She sits without speaking. After a while, they call this wolf hour, the time between dreaming and waking. Feels like a truth, even if it's nonsense. If the dreams get too loud, she adds, breathe into the wind. It'll carry them away. You try it, in deep, frost on lips. Out slow, like exhaling ghosts. Maybe it works. You feel lighter. Grounded, at least, in a sore, freezing, half-delirious body. She stands and slips inside. You follow. Someone has added a second log. The light feels softer now, like it's watching over you instead of merely surviving. You lie down. Sleep comes quickly. Dreams stay quiet. The ground is too hard to dig. That's the first problem. The second is that someone has died. You find out the way everyone does. A whisper passed along the room. A slow silence spreading over breakfast. One less bowl passed around. No wailing. No dramatic declarations. Just a shared awareness. Heavy and calm. Like everyone had already made peace with the possibility and was waiting for it to arrive. He was old. Skin like birch bark. Voice like gravel soaked in mead. Always by the fire muttering about weather and how wolves used to be more polite. Now his place is a folded blanket, boots beside it, walking stick leaned against the wall, as if still awaiting his hand. Death doesn't pause for winter, and winter doesn't make it easier. In some ways, it makes it worse. No soft soil, only locked earth like stone. Digging isn't labor, it's punishment. So they build a cairn. Men haul stones from the riverbank and stack them in a frozen clearing behind the house. The body is wrapped in furs on a wooden board. The face is covered. You don't see it. You don't want to. The burial is short and practical. Words spoken low and rhythmic. More chant than speech. Someone lays a carved bone. Another places a simple knife. You expect drama, flaming ships, thunder, Valkyries. This isn't a saga. This is survival. Even in death, people economize. Historical truth. In deep winter, Viking burials adapted. Ship graves and earthen mounds called for time, hands, materials that might not exist when the land is iron. In Iceland, Greenland, the far north, bodies might be stored in outbuildings, buried shallow, or laid beneath cairns, until spring thaw allowed a fuller rite. Maybe that's why no one walks too close afterward, why someone mutters a protection charm into the fire that night. The air feels different, not colder, just quieter, like the world has left space for him. That evening you stare at the sky, think about the next part. For him, for you, for everyone packed into this frost-locked house. The Vikings didn't agree on a single afterlife. It wasn't Valhalla or nothing. There was hell, cold and shadowed, not evil, just distant. There was Folkvanger, Freya's field. Other places too, beautiful, strange, terrifying. The soul's path wasn't straight. It was a journey through myth. The line between life and death didn't feel final. People carved runes. They told stories until they burned into bone. The dead weren't gone. They were watching, possibly critiquing your fire making. You think of the old man's stories, the way he'd spit in the fire before he began, how he called the moon her, because she listened better than most people. Maybe he knew. Maybe he dreamed it. Maybe he'd made peace months ago and was waiting for the rest of you to catch up. Quirky fact, some families left food and drink for the dead during Yule, inviting them home for one night to hear stories and warm themselves by the fire. Not ghosts. Family briefly returned. People swore they heard footsteps in the rafters, saw fresh impressions in the snow by morning. The longhouse is quiet tonight. No sparring, no arguing. Even the children dim themselves. Grief here isn't loud. It's worn like another layer, in posture, in breath, in the slower way you stir the stew. No one explains it. No one needs to. You wrap your blanket tighter and watch the coals glow steady while the wind keens outside. You stare until the fire blurs into eyes. The same fire you've watched for weeks. Only now, it seems to be watching you back. Someone's missing, but you're still here. In Viking winter, that's everything. There's a new cold now, not lower on a scale, just deeper in the body. The snow's the same endless blanket, the wind just as sharp, but the cold feels like it sinks past skin and muscle and rests in your bones. The fire doesn't touch it, the furs don't stop it. You move like a shadow of yourself, and you're not alone. Everyone has slowed, eyes duller, movements stiffer. The burst you saw at Yule has faded. Even the children have stopped chasing chickens for sport. This is the cold that kills quietly. No fanfare, no screaming. It just settles. You could call it hypothermia if you had a thermometer. Here, it's the moment a body stops trying. It starts with fingers that forget feeling. Toes, too. Joints move like borrowed parts. The worst part is the lies. A dreamy warmth crawling up from limbs to chest, whispering that it's fine to lie down. Just rest. Just sleep. That's the trap. One man goes to check snares before dawn, wrapped in every strip of wool and fur he owns. The wind is light, the snow ankle deep. He doesn't return. By noon, they find him under a pine, sitting as if he paused to breathe, eyes open, mouth parted, gloves still on, that fast. They carry him back stiff. No one tries to warm him. What would be the point? They lay him beside the house while someone clears snow for a burial spot. The ground is too cruel even for stones this time, so they build a pyre, stacking dry wood with grim patience. The flames take a long time to catch. Everyone watches. No prayers, just firelight in winter gloom, smoke rising into a sky that refuses to change. The Vikings understood cold in a way most cultures never had to. They respected it, feared it, made it myth. Frost giants were there at creation, born from the edge of ice. Cold wasn't weather, it was ancient, hostile, named. When it took someone, you didn't fight it, you honored it, you acknowledged it had won. Later, by the fire, a story about a man who tried to outrun winter by running into it, convinced if he went far enough, he'd escape. The snow turned to glass beneath him, and he shattered on the way down. A warning, sure, but also a joke. The kind you tell when there's nothing else to do but laugh at the thing that might take you next. There's a detail you wish weren't true. In extreme cold, people sometimes undress. Brains starved of heat think they're burning. They strip, walk barefoot into drifts, lie down like it's summer sun. The longhouse has a word for it. Half curse, half whisper. The meaning's clear. If someone steps outside smiling in their underwear, you don't follow. You wait. You hope. Or you mark time until the snow eases and there's something to recover. You check your fingers more now. Pinch skin. Tap feet. Anything to remind your body it's still here. You drink more broth, even when it tastes like bark. Park yourself near the hearth and ignore the smoke that stings your eyes. Wrap and unwrap your scarf until friction burns. Pretend your palm lines can tell you how much longer you've got. And you watch yourself and everyone else. Because most people don't die of drama in winter. Not wolves, not swords, not spirits. They die because they stop trying. One small surrender at a time. Skip a meal. Don't tie your boots. Forget to break the ice in the water bucket. Stay outside a minute too long. Let the fire burn low. Miss the moment the man beside you stops shivering. That's all it takes. Scholars argue over winter death tolls. The records are thin, but bones talk. Some mass graves point to seasonal mortality. Too many bodies, too fast. Same village, same month. Was it disease? Famine? Those who've lived it know cold alone can do the job. Tonight, one of the children is too quiet. A little girl who usually sings troll songs. She sits by the wall, staring at her hands. Red nose, pale lips. You crouch, pull her under your blanket, and hum a tune you don't remember learning. She falls asleep with her head on your chest. You stay awake all night. In the morning, she's fine. The sun doesn't rise, but the longhouse still stirs. Someone checks the fire. Someone stirs the pot. Life continues. The cold is still there. Outside, inside, waiting. But so are you. And you haven't stopped trying. You've been in this longhouse long enough to know that privacy is a myth. Every breath, every twitch, every ill-timed stomach grumble is someone else's business. You sleep nose to nose with cousins you've never properly met, wake tangled in goat blankets and stray feet, and bathe, if you can call it that, beside the person whose job it is to make cheese. And yet somehow, despite the crushing closeness of it all, things still manage to happen quietly. Take, for example, the affair brewing in the back corner of the longhouse. It starts with the way two people never quite make eye contact, then the way they do. The way fingers brush a moment too long when passing a cup of ale. The way one of them lingers by the hearth after everyone else is asleep. Subtle, but not that subtle. Nothing stays hidden forever in a room of 20 people pretending not to listen. And honestly, who can blame them? Cold brings people together in ways that go beyond shared warmth and chores. After a month wrapped in the same damp wool, listening to the wind scream through the roof cracks, you start craving contact that isn't survival-based. Not just heat, but touch, connection. Someone who looks at you like you're more than a walking pile of frostbitten toes. It's one of the strangest things about Viking winter. Even in the midst of death, hunger, and frost, people still find room for love, or at least lust. Historically, the Vikings weren't shy about relationships, even in the coldest months. Long winters were prime time for matchmaking, romantic and strategic. No planting to do, raiding season paused. What better time to pair off and keep warm the old-fashioned way? Some marriages were arranged, dowries negotiated, alliances forged, livestock exchanged, but others sparked under firs, over shared chores, during long nights of whispered stories and casual foot-to-foot contact beneath the communal blanket. Darkness gave people cover, gave them courage. When the world outside is frozen and merciless, the heat of another person's breath can feel like salvation. There's a saying here, half serious, half dare. If you make it through one winter together, you'll survive anything. You're starting to see the logic. If two people can huddle for weeks, sharing food, chores, dreams, and foot fungus, and still like each other, that's stronger than most battle-forged bonds. One night you catch the back corner lovers sneaking out, cloaked and flushed with a kind of excitement that looks suspiciously like frostbite, but probably isn't. You pretend not to notice. They return hours later, dusted in snow, wearing matching grins that no one mentions. The fire pops once, like it knows something you don't. Quirky fact, in some traditions, couples weren't considered fully married until they shared a bed for 8 consecutive nights. Miss a night, start over. Try doing that with 20 relatives snoring in the same room and a dog chewing your boots. That's commitment. You overhear an older woman reminisce about binding nights, special Yule days when couples could slip away for privacy. She says it with a smile that's equal parts ancient and spicy. There are smirks, some eye rolls, no judgment. Everyone here knows that sharing warmth isn't just about fighting cold. it's about feeling human. Scholars still argue how open Viking society really was about sexuality. Some sources suggest surprising freedoms. Women could divorce, own property, sometimes choose lovers. Others say the sagas romanticize it. What's clear is that winter didn't put life on hold. It restructured it. And here's your historical nugget. Viking love poetry was very much a thing. Skaldic verses full of fire and ice, longing and lust. Some elegant, some basically 9th century dirty talk. Either way, they proved that even in a world built on survival, there was room for softness. You watch people differently now. How hands find shoulders. How laughter rings a little louder after someone brushes snow from someone else's hair. How one person saves the warmest bowl of stew for another. Affection has an economy here. Nothing wasted. Every look, every lean, every shared breath is purposeful. And maybe you're not immune. The hunger creeps up, not for food but closeness. The press of another body by choice, not necessity. It returns soft and slow, like warmth to numb fingers. You laugh more. Sit closer to the fire. Hold a gaze a beat longer than usual. You remind yourself it's temporary. Spring will come, the snow will melt, and everyone will scatter across farms and fjords and fishing boats. But for now, wrapped in fur and firelight, you are just a person, cold, tired, alive, and someone sees you as worth reaching for. You fall asleep that night wrapped in shared blankets, legs tangled with someone else's, your breath sinking as your dreams fold into theirs. For once, the longhouse doesn't feel crowded. It feels full. You wake to a sound you haven't heard in ages. Dripping. Tiny, inconsistent, unmistakable. Drip, drip, drip. Not a roof leak, not stew bubbling. Actual melting. You sit up so fast your spine protests. You don't care. You shove aside furs and scramble to the door, pushing past a groggy warrior tangled in his own beard. Outside, it's blinding. Not bright, exactly. The sun isn't back yet. But the sky has shifted. Clouds are thinner. The light is clearer. Snow still lies thick, but the drift edges are softening. Ice clings to the eaves, and water runs down in lazy threads. Even the trees look different, less skeletal, more like themselves. Spring isn't here, not yet, but she's on her way, and the world knows it. Inside, the mood changes. Subtle, a touch lighter. A few more people humming as they stir pots or sharpen tools. Someone whistles. No one says why, but you all feel it. The end is coming. Not of winter entirely, but of the worst of it. You've made it through the long dark. Most of you have. One of the old women is still sick. Fading for days, breath ragged, skin waxy. Some say she's simply seen too many winters. Others say she lost someone last season and never quite returned. She lies quiet, wrapped in the same fur she once wore, and waits. No one cries. There's no energy for it. Just quiet care, wiping her lips, holding her hand, whispering sagas when she sleeps. Even now, thaw doesn't stop for death. Historical fact, the Old Norse year was split in two, winter and summer. No spring, no fall. You were freezing or farming. They knew when the change was coming. Melt patterns, the first birds, snow loosening its grip. And when it did, everything shifted. Suddenly, the longhouse hums. Farmers dig out tools. Warriors re-oil armor. Someone patches a fishing net. Plans bloom. Not allowed. Not yet. But you can see them in busy hands. What comes after? When roads unfreeze. When the fjord cracks and boats slip back into water like waking beasts. Hungry. You're swept in too. Chopping more wood than necessary. Reorganizing supplies. Checking boots for holes. Premature, sure. Necessary, absolutely. Hope needs a place to live, and it's nesting in every corner of the longhouse. Food becomes math and prayer. You inventory barley, dried fish, the last shreds of smoked meat. It's thin. You'll make it, barely, if no one wastes. More water, less stew. Forage as soon as the ground releases its grip. Fewer indulgences. One goat looks suspiciously plump. The cook keeps eyeing it like it's already roasting in his mind. Still, a treat appears. A jar of pickled something unearthed from the back. Smells like regret. Tastes like triumph. Laughter follows. Children run louder again. A toddler face plants into a drift and screams with glee. You dust him off and he grins like he's discovered a new planet. There's an old tale about a giantess who ate winter, swallowed it whole, and sat in the sun until it melted in her belly. Then she sneezed, and spring flew out her nose. No one tells you the story outright, but you catch bits of the rhyme as children chant it under their breath. You'd laugh if it weren't so weirdly comforting. People begin to reappear emotionally, not just physically. A young man carves an intricate tree into a beam above the hearth, roots reaching down, branches climbing up. A woman starts singing again, low, about a fisherman who married a selkie. Even the goats seem less offended by existence. The thaw brings mess. Snow collapses, ice turns to slush. Every path becomes a trap for wet socks and twisted ankles. Water finds a dozen new ways into the roof. Someone drops through the top crust and lands knee-deep in mud. The cursing is legendary. Scholars still debate whether northern settlements welcomed the thaw or merely tolerated it. Spring also meant flooding, rot, unstable weather. Houses that stood all winter sometimes buckled under wet weight. Stores spoiled, animals sickened. But it also meant freedom. You could leave, hunt, breathe. You step outside without dread and study the horizon. No green yet, no blossoms. But the fjord ice is veined with cracks. Tiny spiderweb fractures sparkling in the light. You know what that means. Soon someone will test it. Soon someone will sail. And you? You don't know. You're not a raider, not a farmer, not a skald. You're someone who arrived, endured, and now stands blinking in the watery light, wondering what to do with survival. Inside, someone calls your name. Dinner. You brush snow from your sleeves and step through a doorway that no longer smells like smoke and despair, but something better, something closer to living again. The melt has begun. So have you. The ice breaks with a sound you feel in your chest. Not a crack, not a pop, something deeper, like the earth stretching after sleep. You freeze mid-step and scan the fjord. There it is again, a low moan rolling through the air, then a chorus of sharp snaps. Long, crooked veins of open water streak the surface like lightning in slow motion. You've never seen anything move so slowly and feel so dangerous. Everyone gathers outside along the ridge. No one speaks. Cloaks and scarves in a line, all eyes on the water as it fractures. Beneath the surface, darkness churns. A bird circles, the first in weeks, calling once, clear and echoing. Nature is waking up, and it hits you. You survived. Not a night, not a blizzard. The whole winter. You're half frostbitten, sleep-starved, mildly malnourished, emotionally bruised, but alive. The longhouse still stands. Most of its people still breathe. For the first time in lifetimes, the future isn't a vague shape behind snowdrifts. It's real, loud as cracking ice, bright as thin spring light spilling through cloud gaps. Inside, transition becomes a rush. Cloaks aired out, boots repaired again, sled dogs clipped, fishing nets patched though they're more whole than thread. Movement everywhere, chaos that feels giddy. Plans form fast, like steam off a boil. Repairs come first, The roof sags in two places. An outer wall bows where snow pressed too long. The barn door, cracked for weeks, gives up and faceplants into a puddle with a sad little splat. Tools idle all winter snap back to life. Hammers tapping, ropes tightening, slats fitted like puzzles you almost forgot how to solve. Then the animals. Relief looks like goats dancing in mud, headbutting anything within reach. Chickens clatter and complain, deeply suspicious of sunlight. The dog who spent winter sulking under a bench now prances around with a bone the size of a toddler. And the people. With the worst behind you, you really look at each other again. The limp someone hid. The hollowed cheeks of a man who barely ate through January. New lines on a woman's face. Survival has a cost. Spring doesn't erase the tab. It just lets you read it. But there's joy too. Real joy. Someone finds a bone flute and plays a tune so cheerful it feels like blasphemy. Two women dance, spinning in the mud until they fall, laughing. Someone shares the last of the honeyed mead from summer. Suddenly, a party. Not a feast, not yet, but a celebration. You drink, laugh, clap. Even the elders smile. Historical note. Settlements mark the turning with blot. Seasonal festivals to bless planting and seagoing. Songs, offerings, plenty of mead. No sacrifices today, unless you count the goat finally moved from speculation to spit. But the spirit's here. Gratitude, relief. The sense you faced the darkest nights and came through. A quirky spring habit surfaces too. Symbolic sweeping out of winter. Birch branches on beams. Loud chants to drive frost spirits from the eaves. One woman takes it very seriously, smacking every board while rhyming about chasing trolls back to their holes. No one stops her. She's earned the right. Scholars debate how much of this is practical and how much spiritual. Divine reprieve or communal reset. From where you stand, watching people hug and dance and wipe mud from each other's cheeks. It's both. Later, after the mead is gone and fires burn low, you step outside again. The air has less bite, more breath. Snow sinks under your boots. The moon peeks through thinning cloud, silver and patient. You study the longhouse. Smoke-dark walls, patched roof, crooked door frame. Not pretty, not fully sound, but it held. It sheltered you when the world froze. And you're not the same person who walked in. You felt your blood slow. You saw friends freeze. You watched goats fight for bread and children lulled by ghost songs. You sharpened blades, carved wood, cried quietly, laughed when you shouldn't, and you made it. Tomorrow you'll plan, clean, dig into mud, remember how things work. Tonight, you stand under the stars and let yourself feel something you haven't dared to name in weeks. Not just hope, pride. You didn't just witness how Vikings survived the coldest nights. You lived it. The first green you see doesn't come from the ground. It's a scarf, an old strip of woven wool pulled from a chest. Bright in a way nothing has been for months. Some long-forgotten shade of spring. Mossy, hopeful, alive. Its owner says nothing, just drapes it over her shoulders and steps outside, breath misting, feet sinking into slush like she no longer cares. You follow without meaning to. You need to be where color is. The world is still half frozen and soaked with meltwater, but the land's shape is returning. Humps and ridges reappear. Black soil softens along the walls. Tree trunks drip. Birds, not many, but enough to make your heart stutter, flit between branches, chirping cautiously like they aren't sure this isn't a trick. You crouch by the longhouse and scrape away snow with your hands. Cold mud kisses your fingers. You smell it first, the sharp, loamy scent of thawing earth. Then you see it, a tiny, ridiculous sprout pushing through the muck. Barely a plant, more an idea of one. But still, a thing growing. You sit a long time just watching it. A small green rebellion against months of white. Inside, winter tools get stashed. Sled runners come off, snowshoes stacked, bone needles wrapped. New tools take their place. Scythes, seed bags, shovels with cracked handles. The longhouse becomes a hive of forward-thinking noise. No more talk of surviving. Now it's planting, sailing, rebuilding. You help dig runoff trenches, raising blisters inside an hour. You scrape ice from the garden bed where someone vows to try onions again, despite last year's disappointment. The soil resists, then grudgingly yields. Historical fact, in places like Iceland and Greenland, those brief growing windows were everything. Barley, oats, leeks, cabbages, herb plots by the door. Crops weren't just food, they were proof of planning, cooperation, stubborn optimism. You didn't farm here unless you believed the earth would give back. Spring was risky. Too much sun too soon, and the valley flooded. Too little, and the soil never loosened. Balance always. Weather that listened. Gods that noticed. So people hedge. Offerings begin again. Quiet tokens, not spectacle. A slice of bread buried at the forest's edge. A carved figure tucked into a tree hollow. Prayer whispered into the wind. You catch one man pressing a feather into the garden bed, covering it gently with mud. You don't ask. Probably means everything. That night the longhouse smokes again. From cleaning, not cooking. Old hay burned, ashes cleared. Winter garbage tossed. Even the goats refuse some of it. A child flees gagging from the back corner after uncovering something unholy that probably used to be food. The light lingers longer each day. What used to be a 2-hour blink of gray begins to resemble sunshine. Beams stretch at new angles, illuminating corners that haven't seen brightness in months. Dust dances in the shafts, and you watch as if it were sacred. A new ritual appears, though no one names it. Evening standing. People just go outside and face the horizon. No talk, no work. Just faces turned to light, letting it soak in. You join them, breath fogging, shoulders aching, eyes half closed. The light feels like forgiveness. A myth lingers at the edges of memory. After the world's ending, 2 humans hide in a forest, living on dew, clinging to life until the new sun rises. That's what spring feels like here. Not continuation, restart. There's still snow, still hunger. Work ahead that will blister hands and break backs. The waiting is over. The dark has passed. Wolves are quieter. Spirits, soothed by season, slip back to their places in trees, lakes, and under the eaves. And you're lighter. Not just because of warmth, but because you made it through. One last step outside before bed. The sky stretches wide and blue-gray, haunted by a ghost of sunset. A bird sings, not sad, not begging. Confident. A wake-up call. Can't see it, but you know it's there. Puffed on a branch, smug and certain. The little green sprout is still there too, half an inch taller. You laugh, and the wind takes it gently. The door closes behind you. The fire crackles, not because it must, but because it comforts. Someone hands you a bowl of stew that tastes like spring onions and leftover salt pork. Not gourmet, but hot. You eat with a new kind of hunger. Not survival, living. For the first time in forever, you know tomorrow will be better than today. The house doesn't feel like a cage anymore. Now it feels like a memory. Thick, soft, creaky, made of wool and breath and frost and voices that still echo in the rafters when it goes quiet. You've stepped outside more in the last week than you did all January. The snow shrinks. Mud replaces it. Honest, messy, life-giving mud. Your boots are soaked, your fingers raw, and you've never felt more alive. You think back to that first night. The wind too loud, the fire too small, the certainty you couldn't survive this. You almost didn't. There were moments, cold in your bones, silence like drowning, grief that offered no answers. And yet here you are. You remember songs sung in the dark, the heat of shared laughter, the sting of meltwater down your collar during chores you didn't ask for. Most of all, you remember the quiet acts of care, a blanket shared, a story told, a meal portioned just slightly in your favor. No epic battles, no gods descending, just people being kind in the dark. Now birds are back, rivers run, the fjord that was glass is in motion. You move with it. As the season shifts and the world thaws open like a clenched fist, you take one last long look at the longhouse that taught you to endure. You survived the coldest nights of the year, and somewhere along the way, quietly, you became part of the story.